Okay, so we given a requirement here in our standard drawings in a supersection. On the low side of a supersection, we're going to have an angle point here in the subgrade that falls directly underneath the edge of the shoulder on the inside of a curve. So on the low side, the angle point is going to fall into the shoulder, and we're going to go 2% out from that angle point. And then on the high side of super, we're going to move that angle point in 1 foot inside of the edge of shoulder there. So on high side, we're moving it in a foot and we're going 2% out from that angle point there. So to do that, we're going to switch over to the program and take a look. So the way the template is constructed here, we've simply, in our subgrade layer here, I've constructed my angle point. I've called it shoulder APL, and then I have my my subgrade intercept point here. That's going to be a projected design that's going to go out and find whichever end condition solves, and it is simply 2% from that angle point, 2% constrained to that angle point. You remember in both cases, both high and low side, this last segment here was supposed to be 2% slope, and it was supposed to be a 2% slope from the angle point. The angle point on the low side is going to stay here underneath the edge of shoulder, and we're going to move it in 1 foot on the high side of the super. Okay, so as we look at that template being applied to our super, we see that we're most of the way there. We have our angle point here underneath our shoulder. We're going 2% down like it's specified in the typical section there. The problem here is on the high side, we need to bring that point in a foot. And the way we're going to do that is with the curve widening tool here that's in this corridor editing tools, and that's curve widening, create curve widening. First thing we're going to do is locate the corridor, and what we're going to do is we're going to apply a widening table to this. And let's take a look at that widening table. What we're doing is we're specifying how much we're going to move those points in or out on the low side and on the high side. If you remember in our typical section, we're not moving them all at our low side, and on our high side, we're going toward the center line. We're not doing a widening, we're doing a shortening there, so it's a -1. So it's 1 foot toward the center line on the high side. And then we can tell it how much we want to transition from the normal value. Since we're just going a foot, it doesn't really matter how long that transition is. And what we're doing is we're specifying it for each radius value. Now in our typical sections it says all high side and all low side, so our table could be just 2 entries here, a minimum and a maximum radius. I just took an existing table out there and edited it for my needs, so I left the other radiuses in there. But if you had a different value for different radiuses, you could put them in here. So we're going to apply that widening table to our corridor there. And what I'm going to do is just pick our stations along our roadway to that. We'll do a curve to the left and a curve to the right. We're going to call it angle point control. And the first one we're going to do is the right side shoulder angle point. And we have to do this to both the right and the left because they might be high on one curve and they might be low on another curve. Once the control is created for the right side, we're going to step through and do that again for the left side point. So we're going to choose our corridor. Again, we're just going to choose our stationing here to include a couple of curves. And this time we're going to pick that angle point left. Okay, so once that gets created, we can see the results instantly here in our dynamic section dialog. What we can do is just add a temporary dimension line to measure and see what it did there. And we did. It gave it a foot. It moved it inside a foot on the high side of this curve as we stepped through. And then down here on the low side, it did not apply the point control because we told it we didn't need any widening down there. So to look at the results of what it did in our corridor objects there, I'm going to pick the corridor objects and look at the point controls, and we can see it created horizontal point controls for our right shoulder point and for our left shoulder point. and those are being controlled here by the curve widening templates there. So that's the curve widening controls here. Create the point controls that actually move the points in and out.